Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Press Rec Podcast. One Take. I'm Ryan. This is Will. And we're back with another director's commentary, this time in the Wayback Machine. We're looking at Driven, one of our favorite campaigns that Will and I shot in 2019 with a pretty awesome crew. And we wanted to go over the Driven piece for Kim Smith and A Chance to Dance today. A little bit of background on this piece. This was, like I said, shot in 2019 in Charlotte. We shot this with one camera. So the whole project that we're about to watch was one Red camera. We had a crew of, I think, 4 or 5 people. But it was primarily me, you, our friend Patrick Dunnigan, and Denise Toledo as lead producer. And we kind of tag teamed that. So this job was a little different than normal. Like some of the ones, how we're shooting documentaries now is a little different than this piece where we go out with a lot of cameras and we're trying to capture as much as we can. On this one, we had 3 shooters and we could kind of take turns with the camera. So for example, I would shoot for a little bit, 30, 45 minutes. And as soon as I started to feel a little fatigued or kind of running out of ideas, I'd hand it off to you and then you would go, you'd hand it off to Pat and so on. And we ended up getting a lot of coverage that way. So this piece is 7 minutes long. It's a pretty long one. And it was shot over just 2 days, 2 pretty intense days of production. This piece in particular is very near and dear to me. I really developed a personal relationship with Kim after this video and have done some projects with her since we shot this. And I edited this whole piece, so I kind of closed myself up for 3 or 4 weeks and worked on this one pretty intently. So this is one that I look back on fondly, and I think that it's such a great example of use of branded content and storytelling, that this is one of the ones that like the foundation for what would become Press Rec was built on, was working on this project together. So let's go ahead and get it started here.
We are inclusion at its best. We are exactly what inclusion should be. I'm Kim Smith, and this is A Chance to Dance.
So pretty intentional, like starting with the feet there. Like you kind of just see shoes first. You don't really know. And then it goes to kind of the prosthetics. Like that was intentional in shooting that opening sequence. And then these hero shots or video portraits that we did for the campaign. This one with Kim, I remember we kind of went all out and did this at the beginning of day 2. Striking the lights and like trying to time it. So I don't know if you remember, we had to remote start the lights and we had them on different channels.
And if I remember correctly, I could be wrong on this, but all these these portrait shots we did for every Driven piece we made, this might have been the only one where we had like the practical lights in the frame, like intentionally.
Yeah.
Right? We might have had some other ones where they were just like off in the distant background in different sets, but this is one where we like intentionally did this. And like you said, we wanted them to pop on with the remote. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And that hard backlight, pretty intentional. This scene with Kim was really cool. So on the first day, we shot all the dance footage that we'll see with the kids later in the piece and the interviews. And I remember sitting down at a table with you and Denise after that first day and saying like, okay, what's the story here? And like having like a conversation on site to say like, okay, what are the scenes? How is this video going to flow? Where is it all going to be? And we were like, we need footage of Kim dancing.
Yep.
So you remember Pat climbing up and rigging up the light in the drop ceiling to do this big overhead. And it's got a softbox on it. So, and these are, I mean, it was like a normal size ceiling. So the light was hung pretty low. And I remember it was kind of challenging to shoot around that light in there to get this kind of really dramatic top-down effect. This frame in particular where she's got her arms stretched out, we use this a lot in promos. This kind of like, she's almost silhouette. She's by herself. It shows her doing what she loves, but it's very symbolic of the story of her feeling very isolated and going through something on her own. Really, really powerful stuff in this sequence here. This was another good example of one where we kind of tag teamed. Like we didn't know what her abilities were as a dancer. So we were like, I don't know, can we get a bar? Can you stretch your arms out? Like we were just, I mean, we don't know anything about dance, especially at the time of shooting this, right? So this was all kind of new to me to
Yeah.
film something like this. And I remember handing this off to you and to Pat.
Yeah, I remember you took the first pass, and I think once I saw, like, I knew that we wanted this to be kind of a dramatic sequence, and I wasn't sure. I don't think any of us knew what it would look like till we just tried it and tried just getting some shots. And I think you started out doing some of these wides and tights, and I think, like you said, you handed the camera to me. I got what I thought were some cool shots. She did the same kind of sequence over and over, and then Pat did it. So I couldn't tell you looking at this final sequence who shot what, but I know it was a group effort to try to get the sequence shot out in a cool way to kind of introduce Kim as a dancer, and she's like teaching these other kids about dancing. Because it wouldn't have had the same feeling if we never see her in action, right?
Right.
So this was all kind of like, yeah, like you said, after day one, we had all this great footage, and then we were like, well, how does Kim fit into this other than just being a teacher? And I think illustrating that she was a dancer in her former life, earlier in life, is pretty powerful here.
Yeah. And in shooting this with one camera, we had the Teradek, the wireless small HD, kind of rigged up so that you and the rest of the crew could be like, we closed the door in this instance. And so it was just the shooter and Kim in the room, and it was very private. And you guys were out watching everything that I was filming, or when you came in, I was out watching what you guys were doing. So we kind of knew what the other person was getting. And that helped us creatively, like maybe your framing inspired a shot that Pat got or something that I shot afterwards because we saw it just a little bit differently, or we wanted to tweak just one little thing. But yeah, it was cool to have that. And a creative challenge to shoot something like this with one camera.
For sure.
Mother of 3 beautiful daughters. I am 52 years young. I grew up learning ballet, tap, jazz.
This is one of my favorite
point,
shots too.
Lyrical. Ballet and lyrical were definitely
I remember
my
trying to do
favorites.
that so many
Now I
times
pretty
before
much
we got
teach
it.
all styles to the kids at A Chance to Dance. I found out at 42 years old that I was pregnant with Reagan. So she was a huge surprise. It was basically like starting over. And then at 18 months old, she was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. This is Reagan's room, and
So
Reagan loves.
that interview shot. It like the music went out. We let that moment breathe. That's when the audience gets hit with something really heavy. Imagine, at 40 years old, your entire life flipping upside down, right? Let that moment breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
We still haven't seen Reagan. We still haven't heard Reagan. We're just kind of still introducing those characters, giving the audience a reason to care about Kim, right? Establishing her love for dance, but now we're learning about her in a more personal way. And this next scene, we go into her home, and that's something that's very private. She invites us into her home, into Reagan's room, into her room, and we see how they interact at home. And it develops a stronger personal connection, I think, with the audience, because this is something so personal.
Do you remember was it originally planned to go to her house, or do you think once we got into this, you asked her if we could come to her house?
I remember talking about going to the bedroom, Reagan's bedroom. But I don't think that we had completely planned to like have her friends come over and shoot the sequence that we did downstairs that we see. I think Kim had mentioned that like Reagan loves to bake. So the idea was they were going to like bake cupcakes or something. And as we started filming that, like things took a turn that I think we'll see.
All things planets and solar system. Reagan loves the fact that she's standing on top of whatever planet that is with her own little flag.
Okay. Guess. Where I?
Pretty sure
So
every shot in
Reagan
this entire
is
sequence
on
is
a
all
scale.
handheld.
She was
Yeah.
diagnosed
We didn't use any
with
tripods
autism
except for like the
spectrum
interviews and
disorder
like the
at
Kim's
18 months old.
some of the dance sequence I think Kim did in the intro was
Yeah.
locked off, but the rest is all handheld, and that was also intentional, right?
Yep.
Why do we do a lot of handheld stuff with these types of docs?
Especially for this piece, like you want the viewer to feel like they're there, right? Like we're like this shot, for instance, where everybody's sitting down, we kind of sit down with them. Like it's almost like you're in the living room with them and feeling this out and being a part of this little play date with these girls, right? I think that style is something that we developed over years of our careers in action sports, and that's part of how we film, and I think how we see the world, right? And we want that injected into our work to be authentic.
Yeah. another thing too is like these docs, like action happens so fast on the fly that moving a tripod around, adjusting the height, moving the legs around, sometimes you just don't, you're going to miss a shot if you're lugging a tripod around and trying to adjust the height and get down on their level. So I think a lot of the reason we do handheld is just so we can be more reactionary and nimble on these types of shoot, where we could just whip a 180 and get down on our knees if we had to, right? It just makes a big difference. And the difference between getting a shot and missing a shot sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And for the, like you said, the realism that the handheld imperfectness creates with making you feel like you're in the room with these people.
Yeah, and it's more authentic to the story to do it that way. Like it if you're not held up by your equipment, then you're letting the video or the story unfold in a way that like the gear doesn't get in the way.
Right.
You can just tell the most real version of the story.
She was nonverbal until the age of around 4. She is obviously very
Reagan
verbal
talking
now.
in the
She has
background.
a huge
It's so
vocabulary-
cute, but it
huge
really
vocabulary
hammers the
for
point
us,
home
but not necessarily reciprocal
for everything that
language,
Kim's
so it's
talking
very
about in this
hard for
sequence
her
here.
to have a back and forth conversation. Like if I give Emma or Ava instructions, they can follow those, where Reagan doesn't really have that quite yet. I chose to teach dance to children with disabilities because of Reagan. She inspired me to do it. A Chance to Dance is
I
a
loved
big
editing this dance
melting
sequence.
pot
This was so
of
fun.
What inclusion absolutely should be. We take every kid, regardless of what their special need is, and we bring them all into one class together, and we celebrate with dance. Dance doesn't require a voice because we can express ourselves just through art and music and dance.
I love to dance, and I love
This was one where we shot this for a couple of hours, I
Yeah.
think. There was like 2 big groups of dancers. It was younger kids and then older kids. And I want to say it was like 90 minutes
It
with
was,
each group or
yeah.
something really long. And we traded off a bunch during that time, back and forth, to do the camera work.
I do remember some of the limitations we had in this room. There was a bunch of mirrors, and we had our crew in the room with these dancers. So placing the lights and the crew always away from the mirrors was a logistical challenge. But we ended up making it work. I know that we probably overshot the scene just because, like you said, these were 2 long classes, like an hour to 90 minutes each. But we knew that we wanted to capture this pretty heavy, not knowing what would make it into the final cut. And not knowing exactly what we were filming, we were just kind of freestyling it, right?
Yeah.
And this was a group effort with you, me, and Pat, just saying, all right, my arms are tired. Here, you take the camera for a while. And then we keep trading, and we all just kind of like watch and observe while the other people are filming and try to like get ideas and like premeditate some shots.
Yep. And I know that we didn't, like the intro sequence with all the feet, we kind of thought of that on the fly. Like we didn't come into this knowing exactly everything that we were going to get. It was a lot of reactionary filming and a lot of like, oh, this could be something really cool, and trying to get enough of it to build out a sequence. Another thing, like I noticed just in watching it this time, like you could see some of the lights in the shot. You can see, maybe there's like an off reflection or the audio is not perfect, but it kind of doesn't matter. Right? Like who cares?
If you watch this far, you're not paying attention to that kind of stuff. You're really focused on who these people are and how special this place is.
And we're 2 minutes in, and we're just now kind of getting to the why. Like we've established who Kim is. We've seen Reagan. We've kind of experienced her in her home environment. We understand a little bit about what Kim is going through, and she says, that's why I wanted to start this. And we get into kind of the impact that Kim has on this community that is new to her, right? She helped foster and bring all of these families together through dance, art, and music.
Yep.
I love to dance, and I love Miss Kim.
My name is Brianna, and I love to dance. We're all powerful.
Like a powerful rock star.
So there's a good example. I'll pause it here of the rock star quote. Like you can see Pat in the top left corner. You can see the light stand on the right. But like, who cares,
Yeah.
right? Nobody. You're paying attention to her. Say she feels like a rock star. That's pretty amazing.
Yep.
That just being in this program.
Yep.
I remember having the kids sit in a big circle, and we shot all of these. Like we went one by one and shot all of these. I don't remember if I was in this one or if you were in this one filming this, but I remember getting this and hearing her say that, and I was like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's so good. That so encapsulates what we're trying to get at here. And they were so pumped.
Yeah, they were.
They truly loved.
These kids were not fazed by the cameras at all. They weren't
Not at
shy.
all.
It was really cool to see them excited for
Yeah,
this.
for sure. I remember it was really important to me when editing this to let this dance sequence breathe.
Yeah.
We want to see the kids. We want to be inclusive here.
It's
We
one
want
of-
to show them expressing themselves through the art that they love.
Yeah, it's one of the only montages where we dip the interviews down and let the music rock out
I'm
for
gonna let you say yours 'cause I know
Yeah.
you said
a
it
while.
right. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ava, and I have schizencephaly, which is a brain disorder, and I also have septal dysplasia.
You want to tell them who you are?
I'm Sophia Grace Sinyard. I have tuberous sclerosis. My body produces tumors and all the vicodins. I'm on chemo right now. That's a medicine that I take every morning. I'm nervous, Mom.
Don't be nervous. But if you want, do you want to do this and make all of your friends happy?
This is when it really starts to hit.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I remember thinking this was like hit me out of nowhere. This was like the moment the first time I got like emotional while being on set, just because like what these kids are saying is like, wow, this is like some really heavy stuff here. And I have young kids too, so I can really empathize like what these parents are going through. So definitely, if you watch this far and you're a human, you definitely feel some empathy for these people.
100%. And I can only begin to imagine what it's like, what these kids are going through, what these families are going through, to have to do something like this. They're very, very strong individuals.
Yep.
So I remember this interview.
You are representing not just Sophia, but you're representing all of your friends, saying, we can do this. We don't have a lot of play dates outside of A Chance to Dance.
I remember this moment very vividly
Yep.
when we shot this, because Sophia came into the room and she sat down and she was really, really nervous and camera shy. And so we said, okay, we're going to stop recording. It's okay. And they got up and they had this moment, but we were still rolling.
Yep.
They didn't know that we were still rolling, or they thought that we were taking a break, or at least she did.
Mm-hmm.
And they shared this very, very intimate moment that we couldn't have planned.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a real pep talk
Yep.
from Mom.
I remember you were directing this and asking Mom the questions, and I was rolling camera, and you looked at me, you said, okay, Sophia, we're going to cut. And you looked at me and you said, don't cut. And I said, okay. And that's how these special moments are captured. Because again, this could not be scripted. This could not be planned. We just had to be reactionary. And if we cut, we would have been kicking ourselves, right? Because you get some of these special moments when they're least expected.
Mm-hmm. And you can see the mic. Who cares,
Yeah.
right? This is such a powerful moment and sequence here. You got to leave that stuff in.
Yep.
It wouldn't be worth it to try and cut around it. We'd lose the authenticity in that moment there.
100%.
Book Bag doesn't come home with birthday invitations, but when she comes here, it's home for her.
There are very few social opportunities for these kids because the majority of their day, 24/7, is therapies and doctor's appointments. So it's really important that programs like this provide opportunities socially so that they can make friends. Sometimes if there's like a lot going on around her, it can be like a little overstimulating, and even though she doesn't like really show it out here, she gets like super anxious and then she makes herself sick, which is exactly what she's doing right now. Do you want me to help you? I'll help you. When she was first diagnosed. And
This
you
is also
slowly
the
start
second time
sharing
you
that
cut
with
back to the
people,
home
the
scene.
people
It was
who
the
are
same
your
day,
friends.
same filming session, but you
It's not that they're
spliced
not your friends
the
anymore.
home scene in half. Why did you do that? Do you remember why?
I think that what she talked about earlier on in the piece was more establishing, and this is more experiencing it and living it.
Where
This
they
frame in
become
particular,
distant
where we're
friends,
kind of
like you
looking into
don't
the
get
door here
invited
with
over for
Kim helping
dinner.
Reagan, I think is pretty symbolic of like the whole piece. In a way, Kim feels very isolated from, society or whatever, compared to her life before Reagan. and like we're looking through this doorway at her. She's experiencing something. The viewer's kind of outside her looking in. It's handheld. It's very raw. We didn't plan. We didn't know that Reagan was gonna be nervous around us and go in the bathroom and make herself sick. Like, this is a real moment that we all experienced. And I remember, especially when editing this, how hard that was. Like, this was very emotional to sit through and edit. And I edited this by myself. Like, the first few cuts were all by myself. And it's like hard.
Yeah. And this also is like kind of goes right up to the edge of like what's appropriate, because if someone says, I need to go to the bathroom, I'm going to be sick, you normally would like cut camera, like let this person have some privacy. But in this case, this is part of the story and a very important part of the story of what Kim as a mother deals with the child having like what Reagan has, right? So it might feel a little weird rolling camera on a child going to the bathroom, but it's part of it's just part of their everyday life. Like this, she says this happens all the time when Reagan gets nervous or upset. She makes herself sick. So, we wouldn't roll camera on stuff like this in all the, on like all cases, but in this certain case, it felt appropriate. Mom obviously knew we were filming, weren't like intruding. She could have shut the door if she wanted privacy.
And we tried to be sensitive. Like, it's not like I'm showing like Reagan making herself throw up, right? Like, this is an attempt at being tasteful in sharing this and letting the viewer kind of experience what it's like to live like this.
Right.
To me, it further like draws that emotional connection to Kim and her scenario, and really, I think, puts the viewer in the shoes of their family.
Yeah.
Through a sequence like this.
That they're not your friends anymore, but they become distant friends. Like, you don't get invited over for dinner, you don't get invited to go to a movie or to birthday parties. It's like your life completely changes and you feel very isolated. I know that I did. When I started this program, I had no idea how life-changing it was going to be for me, because these parents are now like my village. It is the biggest blessing in the world to have people that get it, that you can cry with and laugh with and celebrate with, and we are truly like one big family. I sit in here with their kids and teach, and we laugh and we have fun, and sometimes the parents get so loud in the lobby we might have to step out and say, hey, take it, because that's their time to just talk and bounce ideas off each other, cry together, celebrate together, whatever. But that is a huge thing for them.
She is showing us that our kids can do these things. A lot of us are told by so many therapists, doctors, and everything that your kids can't do this, your kids can't do that. And she is standing up and saying, yes, your kids can do this. Just bring them here. Bring them to me. Let me show you what your kids can do. So she's more than a teacher.
I love you.
I remember shooting this moment in particular. This is a shot through one of those mirrors in the dance studio, so it's like reflected back at them. And it was like they were in the middle of the dance class, and that song had just finished. And like, this girl was having this moment with Kim, and everybody stopped. The room was silent. It was just them. And they shared this really special and intimate moment, and then you hear the applause from everybody in the room. To me, and we shot this very early. Like, we had shot Kim's interview, and then right after we shot this dance stuff. And to me, it was like a really, it hit home in this moment, because all of the kids in the room allowed them to have this moment. It was very inclusive and supportive and positive and open-minded from all the children in this room. That I remember being very passionate about making sure that this moment was in that final cut.
Yeah.
As these things changed and they, you go through revisions, you collaborate with other people.
Yeah.
There are certain things that other people see that you don't, that they want to keep. But this was something that I felt really strongly about.
Yeah.
To be in.
And what I see when I watch this is like all these kids look at Kim as like a second mom, because the way they talk to her and the way they lift her up, you can tell they really respect her, and she treats them like they're her kids too. So again, just kind of reinforcing that special bond that she's created with these kids through dance, and spending so much time with them and their families is really cool.
Yeah, powerful stuff here.
As it is for me. It's life-changing for these kids. When I started this, I had no idea how it was going to touch people. When I started this, I'm not going to lie, I was flying by the seat of my pants. I knew how to teach dance, and I was an advocate for these kids, but I wasn't sure how to mesh the two. Sometimes I sit back and look at what it's turned into, and I don't even know how we got here. Chance to Dance meets at Miss Donna's School of Dance. Miss Donna has a huge competition company with nearly 300 dancers. So we travel alongside them. We wear the same jackets. We go to regionals.
So here's where the story
nationals.
kind of takes
My
a
junior
turn,
team
and we
has been
wrap
invited to
everything
the World Dance
towards
Championship twice.
the competition, their sort of triumph,
The second
overcoming
time they were there,
adversity
they were given
as a
the
group,
first ever inspiration
to
award
be a
at
part
the
of this World Dance
which was
Championships.
the coolest thing.
It's very nice of them to let us use the footage for this
because
piece.
now at other competitions, children are presented that award, and it all started because of the inspiration of these kids. For me, when Reagan was diagnosed, I knew right then that I wanted to do something to make a difference. I didn't know what that was going to be, and it took me about 5 years to figure that out, and now I'm living that dream.
Kim's a pretty incredible person.
Yeah.
To be able to pull herself up and provide something like this to these families and these kids it takes a really strong person to be able to do that.
Yeah, another thing, I've never thought about this, but one thing that's interesting now watching this years after we shot it is how you introduced, it's Miss Donna's Chance to Dance, or at the very end you show where they are.
Yeah.
But that almost doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
It never really,
Right.
if you get into this, you don't really care where they are or where the studio is. You're just in it with these kids, like you're the viewer, you're part of this, and you don't know if they're in a strip mall or in a private dance studio somewhere, but at the end we kind of just show like, here's where we are, and then these kids go out and compete.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a little, it just shows how they are kind of seen by the world. They're not just doing this in private all the time. They do go out on the national stage, and they are on TV, which that shows that's like a whole nother dimension to this piece that it's kind of like the payoff at the end that the world does get to see them dance.
Right. And it plays on like the inclusivity of it all, right? This is just a regular dance studio, and the volunteers are part of that larger dance troupe, and they want to help these kids. They want to be involved in the program. They're constantly coming back, and it's all volunteer based. I mean, this is a pretty small nonprofit. So it's amazing that they're able to operate and that Kim's able to do this. Something else that's interesting about this piece is right here at the end is where we get to the brand, right? In the last few seconds, we land on this frame that says Driven, presented by Scott Clark Auto Group. This was paid for by a local auto dealer, but we never go to the auto dealer in this film. They're never brought up.
We never even see a car in this whole piece.
Not even in a car. And I think that this is a great example of a brand, especially a local advertiser, taking a chance on branded content. And this film did over 1 million views for them in the first week on Facebook, which is pretty amazing that a piece this long with this kind of subject matter would drive that many views that fast. I certainly didn't expect that, but I think it's because we truly made a piece of branded content that was unique and special to the dealership.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time you shared this with the client, if they gave you any pushback on like, where's our branding? Did they say anything like that, or were they like, oh, this is great, we love it?
So I'll answer that kind of long-winded, but let's back up to when we said we wanted to do this, right? Like we worked with Michelle, a producer who we work with. Michelle found Kim, and as soon as I read the treatment, I was like, we have to do this. This is exactly what we're trying to do with this campaign. And I presented it to the guys at the auto group, and they were like really apprehensive to tell a story like this. They were afraid of like how something like this could go wrong.
Right.
And from a brand perspective, I can respect that, but I fought pretty hard and I felt really passionate that we could do this tastefully and do this well. And I remember them finally when they gave the sign off, I fought for weeks. We got to do Kim. We got to do Kim. Got to do Kim. They said, okay. And the guy the main dude is a guy named Chris. And he said, all right, if you guys do this, you better make me cry. That's what he said. And this is like, 6'5", like football player, like all American kind of dude. He's like, you better make me cry. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted. And we made this piece and we came back and, unfortunately I couldn't be there in person when we showed this for the first time. I was virtual. But Denise was there and she had him set up. They had this conference room where there's like big TV at the end where they like premiered the film. And we watched it in its entirety and I just kind of listened. And I remember the first time they watched this, it was like silent for like a solid minute, like enough for everybody to be uncomfortable, quiet. They kind of let it breathe. And it was clear that they were emotional in that room. And I didn't want to break the silence on a Zoom call, like come in real big, me on the TV. What'd you guys think? Just let that moment be what it was going to be. And no, this was the version that got uploaded, the first thing that we showed them. There was no pushback on branding. There was no, what about the dealership? It was clear that they believed in Kim. They wanted to align themselves as an organization with the values of A Chance to Dance, everything that Kim's doing, everything that she stands for as a person who is particularly driven to do amazing things.
Yep.
I'm still amazed, for lack of a better word, at the courage that the Scott Clark team had to spend money on a campaign like this, and create something that is really evergreen and timeless and true to their brand values. Like they really walked the walk on this one.
Yeah.
This whole campaign, like these dancers, they pulled stills from this and they were on billboards. These were on TV commercials. They were pre-rolls on YouTube and distributed digitally. So the impact of this was huge.
Right. Now that you told that little backstory on like working with the client on like presenting this and getting them to commit, I do remember you having to like twist some arms a little bit. And I remember you telling like the CEO, like, don't be afraid to be bold.
Yeah.
You like just had to just get that out. And I think they slowly got it. It wasn't like the easiest sell, but I think once these videos started trickling in, and we did 12 of these over like an 18-month, 2-year period, this was like probably somewhere in the middle, if I remember correctly. It wasn't like the first one.
It was 15 stories.
15 total.
That we did over, about 18 months. And this one was right in the middle. I think we shot this like summertime. And this one came out, this was in the first drop. So they dropped them in batches of 3. And this was like the first drop. And I mentioned earlier that this video did 1 million views on Facebook in the first week. Just incredible.
Yeah.
I don't think they could have ever imagined that it would get those views. That they didn't know how successful this campaign was going to be. They took a chance on this. And I think that it really got their name out there to a lot of different like niche communities. As part of the Driven campaign, we did this piece on Kim. We did a piece on a skate park. We did a piece on a female, like young race car driver, some volunteers at different places, like an old folks home and an animal chiropractor. I mean, it really ran the gamut. But they were all people who were very driven individuals, and they all have made great impacts on the communities that they were parts of. And that's why they were a good fit for those stories, because they overcame something incredible. They're doing things that are incredible. They're driven by what it is that they do. And Scott Clark is driven to serve that community because of amazing people like Kim and the others who we got to feature in this campaign. I hope that this can serve as an example for other brands, local, national, that they should be taking a chance on sharing the stories of their communities and lifting up those that they can help empower through sharing their stories with the world.
100%. Very well said.
Insist that this is an isolated incident. We will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds. That's hard to be instead not you. Indeed, that are